very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this debate this afternoon on this very important piece of legislation, the Base Erosion and Profit Sharing Inclusive Framework Country-by-Country Reporting Bill 2023, some 22 clauses in length. Mr. President, the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, commonly known as BEPS, concerns a pressing issue that is affecting economies worldwide. And I take the opportunity to compliment the Honourable Minister of Finance, Acting Prime Minister, for bringing this legislation to the House. And to ask this August Chamber to support the effort to pass this legislation so that we can address some important issues given rise to the concept of BEPS. As recently as the 24th of November 2023, the Honourable Minister of Finance is recorded in Hansard as telling us that the government, of which I am proud to be part, led a team from the Ministry of Finance, the Tax Treaty Unit, the Board of Inland Revenue, the Office of the Attorney General, to establish a high-level committee to deal with the problem created by BEPS, the placement by the European Union of Trinidad and Tobago on a list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. The committee continues to work with the Global Forum Secretariat through intense technical assistance towards a common goal of preparing the necessary legislative, administrative, and operational improvements to undergo the peer review to protect the integrity of the global financial system and to comply with the EU requirements. Unquote. Mr. President, this committee continues to work in tandem with the European Commission and the Global Forum Secretariat through intensive technical assistance towards a common goal of preparing the necessary legislative, administrative, and operational requirements and improvements to undergo its Phase 2 peer review in order to protect the integrity of the global financial system, inclusive of the EU financial system. This commitment, Mr. President, is evident today and the very reason why we stand here in this chamber. The emphasis on international compliance reflects a recognition of shared values, mutual respect, and a commitment to addressing global challenges collectively. The government's approach reinforces its commitment to foster transparency, fairness, integrity in the global tax system that supports economic growth and social equity. By aligning tax rules with economic substance and preventing the artificial shifting of profits, Trinidad and Tobago can safeguard its tax bases and promote sustainable development. In today's globalized economy, Mr. President, multinational corporations operate across borders, leveraging various jurisdictions to minimize their tax liabilities. We've heard of that in detail from the Honourable Minister of Finance, and I will not repeat that which he has so eloquently put before us. And we recognize, Mr. President, that while tax planning is a legitimate business practice, concerns have emerged and continue to exist regarding the erosion of tax bases and the shifting of profits to low-tax jurisdictions, depriving governments of essential revenue. And it is in response to these challenges that Trinidad and Tobago has recognized the need for concerted action to address BEPS. Mr. President, I wish to place emphasis on the fact that the Global Forum Bill, which was debated and passed in the other House, in the other place on November 24th, 2023, is geared to address Trinidad and Tobago's placement on the EU's list of non-cooperative jurisdictions. And by Global Forum Bill, I refer to the miscellaneous provisions, Trustees, Exchequer and Audit Act, the Minister of Finance Incorporation Act, Proceeds of Crime, Income Tax, Companies, Partnerships, Securities, Tax Information Exchange Agreements, the Non-Profit Organizations, and Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Act 2023. I make the point here, and I will return to it, that the bill that we have before this August Chamber today is part of a package of legislation that this government is committed to passing, has already passed, and will be returning to the Senate to address. This is not a one-off waving of a magic wand to solve all perceived challenges. It requires hard work, it requires attention to detail, it requires research, and it requires discussions with multilateral agencies and other governments so that we get it right on a continuing basis. Trinidad and Tobago's placement, Mr. President, on the EU's list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes, as this House will be aware, is as a result of 3 criteria. The first is the non-compliant rating by the Global Forum. Second, the Forum on Harmful Tax Practices. And importantly, the inclusive framework on base erosion and profit shifting, the anti-BEPS measures. And it is this bill before this August chamber today by which we attempt to address the third criteria. Mr. President, the first standard agreed and implemented provides for the international exchange of information on request, where a tax authority can request a particular piece of information to progress a tax investigation. The second provides for the international automatic exchange of information, where a predefined set of information on financial accounts held by non-residents is automatically exchanged every year. This exchange is underpinned by ensuring that the information is kept confidential, properly safeguarded, and particular requirements are placed on jurisdictions to address this and to ensure it. The Global Forum monitors the worldwide implementation of these standards and conducts peer reviews to ensure that the standards are implemented effectively. It also serves as a forum, and that is important, for its members to discuss these issues and delivers capacity building and technical assistance to members to support them in implementing the standards. Mr. President, the base erosion and profit shifting pillar, the third pillar, provides for the introduction of country-by-country reporting requirements in line with BEPS Action 13. Country by country. One doesn't need a definition section to understand what is meant by a country. A country such as Trinidad and Tobago and its reporting relationships to another country, a European country, Sweden. One does not need a definition section to define country-by-country reporting. A CBC report, country-by-country report, provides local tax authorities visibility to revenue, income, tax paid on accrued, employment, capital, retained earnings, tangible assets, and activities. It provides tax authorities information to assist them in assessing transfer pricing risks and make determinations on how they allocate tax audit resources. The Honourable Minister of Finance has already spoken to the annual consolidated revenue threshold for MNEs, and I will not return to that at the risk of repeating him needlessly. This pillar is also inclusive of Action 14, the mutual agreement procedure, which has already indicated that Trinidad and Tobago needs to amend and update a significant number of its tax treaties. Trinidad and Tobago reported that it intends to update all of its tax treaties via bilateral negotiations to be compliant with the requirements under Action 14 minimum standards and has to be in place for specific negotiations. The MAP, that is to say the mutual agreement procedure, is included, Mr. President, in Article 25 of the OECD Model Tax Convention and commits countries such as Trinidad and Tobago, COUNTRIES, to endeavor to resolve disputes related to the interpretation and application of tax treaties. The peer review process is conducted in 2 stages. Stage 1 assesses countries against the terms of reference of the minimum standard according to an agreed schedule of review. Stage 2 focuses on monitoring the follow-up of any recommendations resulting from jurisdictions' Stage 1 peer review report. And Mr. President, BEP's BEPS undermines the very foundation of our tax systems, eroding the tax base of nations and shifting profits to low-tax jurisdictions. This not only deprives governments of essential revenue needed for public services and infrastructure, but also creates an unfair advantage for multinational corporations over smaller businesses that cannot engage in such aggressive tax planning. It is therefore imperative that we tackle BEPS through international cooperation and collective action. One proposed solution is the implementation of measures, Mr. President, to ensure greater transparency and information exchange between tax authorities. By sharing information about the economic activities of multinational corporations, we can identify and address instances of profit shifting more effectively. Most recently, Mr. President, the Council of the European Union publication, October 17, 2023, added Trinidad and Tobago with Antigua and Barbuda, Belize and Seychelles, with a total of 16 countries that are on the EU list of for non-cooperative tax purposes. It is why we have to continue on an ongoing basis to update our legislation as the goalposts continue to shift. And that doesn't apply only to us. There are any number of other countries that are constantly having to make these adjustments. Why? Because we trade in an international environment. We are a nation island in a sea of many other economies, and we have to coexist and hold our own head and shoulders ahead of the rest by collaboration, compliance, and strict adherence to upgraded standards of financial propriety. That's why. Mr. Chair, Mr. President, this bill presently before this Senate is accordingly a critical piece of proposed legislation so as to enable and position Trinidad and Tobago to comply with its obligations with respect to the European Union requirements. I can assure this House that this government is taking every step possible to attend to its remaining deficiencies by implementing comprehensive measures to address BEPS, to combat tax avoidance with a fair and transparent global tax system. The government continues to take a cohesive, multi-pronged approach, including administrative and operational measures, as well as the introduction of a number of laws to ensure Trinidad and Tobago's removal from the EU list. Among those laws are included the very bill we are debating here, the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Inclusive Framework Country by Country Reporting Bill 2023. Secondly, the Global Forum Act, which I have already mentioned, which was debated in this very chamber on the 24th of November, 2023, and passed in the other place on the 19th of January, 2024. The CROSS Bill, the acronym, and my learned friend, Senator Ahi, has teased me, Thompson Ahi, on the word CROSS. It is the acronym for Computer Registration Online System. That is to say, the miscellaneous provisions, Registrar General, Companies, Registration of Business Names, and Non-Profit Organizations Bill 2023, which has already been debated in this August chamber at the 12th of December 2023 and has been laid in the other place on the 13th of December 2023. That is going to make a comprehensive series of amendments to the legislation that is identified in the long title, which will be read along with the Global Forum Bill, will be read along with this bill that we are debating today, is going to target concepts such as beneficial ownership so that persons are not able to hide behind the veneer and disguises of corporate structures that are just names on a building outside of a structure. The Special Economic Zone Act number 1 of 2022, which was assented to on this 31st of January 2022, Mr. President. This act provides for the designation, development, operation, and management of special economic zones and the establishment of the Special Economic Zones Authority. It is a comprehensive approach to prudent fiscal standards and strict management of our obligations to ensure that our society is guided by canons of equity, transparency, and the avoidance of tax evasion. Our approach not only enhances the country's standing in the international arena, Mr. President, but also reinforces this government's role as a responsible and accountable global actor. Mr. President, in implementing this legislation, there are a number of significant benefits to Trinidad and Tobago. Enhanced tax transparency. We've heard from the Honourable Minister of Finance, the fact, when you look at the provisions in the bill, that these are transparency objectives because of what will be published on a regular basis once we have the wisdom and the courage to pass this bill today into law, to identify aggressive tax planning strategies and to ensure that companies pay their fair share of taxes in the jurisdictions where they operate. Another significant benefit, protection of the tax base. This will close loopholes and address mismatches to ensure that governments can collect the revenue necessary to fund essential public services, infrastructure, social programs, thereby promoting economic stability and development. This will prevent tax avoidance strategies which exploits gaps to artificially shift profits to low or no tax jurisdictions. The legislation would aid in the injection of more revenue into the economy through the reduction of tax evasion. It will create a more level playing field for businesses by reducing the advantage employed by multinational corporations engaging in tax avoidance. Compliance with BEPS standards ensures that all businesses, regardless of size or geographic location, will compete on fair terms, fostering healthy competition and innovation. It will strengthen international cooperation among countries, country by country, to combat tax evasion and avoidance effectively. Through information exchange and mutual assistance, governments can detect and deter illicit financial flows, promoting global financial stability and integrity. Improved investor confidence. The bill, as a suite of legislation which the government is passing, enhances investor confidence by signaling a commitment on the part of this country, by this government, to fair and transparent tax practices. Excuse me. This confidence attracts investment, it stimulates economic growth, and contributes to the overall prosperity of countries implementing BEPS measures. And it promotes sustained development, driven by a collective commitment to inclusivity. Trinidad and Tobago follows the whole of government and whole of society approach to sustained development goal implementation. The increased revenue can be directed towards poverty reduction, education, healthcare, and infrastructure projects, fostering inclusive growth and reducing inequalities. Mr. President, in short, this legislation is aimed at combating tax avoidance strategies used by multinational corporations to shift profits to low-tax jurisdictions, to erode the tax base of countries where they operate, to close loopholes, enhance transparency, and ensure that multinational corporations pay their fair share of taxes while simultaneously addressing deficiencies, creating, a fairer, more transparent and sustainable global tax environment. By addressing the challenges of base erosion and profit shifting, countries can promote economic prosperity, social equity, and responsible corporate citizenship. This government, Mr. President, continues to work to improve Trinidad and Tobago's current non-compliant rating and to ensure Trinidad and Tobago's removal from the European Union's list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. We have heard from the Honourable Minister of Finance of the peer review to be taking place later this year. The gaps in our compliance can be addressed with, not least, the aggressive implementation of the necessary legislation in a timely manner. Tackling BEPS, Mr. President, requires a collective effort and commitment from governments, businesses, and international organizations. A steadfast commitment to implementing these BEPS measures is essential to promote tax certainty, enhance trust in the tax system, and create a more equitable environment for businesses to thrive. This underscores the importance of international cooperation in addressing the challenges posed by BEPT and ensuring a level playing field for businesses worldwide. Therefore, Mr. President, as I close, I ask the members of this chamber to work with us steadfastly and with the appropriate urgency to pass this necessary legislation. I thank you.
Senator Leiter.